Jeff, Jim, and Carmela, part number 9. Turkish intelligence knew Jeff was on his way to Istanbul, but at this time they did not know anything about Vladimir. Mehmet, a taxi driver, and their agent, to watch and insert himself with people entering the country at Istanbul airport, was familiar with Jeff and always drove him around Istanbul during the rare times he could use a taxi. Mehmet liked Jeff, but nothing missed Mehmet's eye when he had someone in his taxi. Mehmet and the Turks did not know about Jeff's special talents. Some of the Turkish agents had heard rumors about a MI7 operative that possessed super memory, but for now they had not connected it with Jeff. The only thing Mehmet knew about Jeff, he was MI7. Today, Mehmet would be Jeff's taxi driver and would keep his ears open for any information he could learn. After driving anyone in his taxi, Mehmet would always present a written report to his supervisors. Neither Mehmet nor Turkish intelligence knew Jeff was aware of Mehmet's position in Turkish intelligence. Jeff, with his extraordinary natural abilities, knew everything about Mehmet. A steady drizzle welcomed Jeff to Istanbul. The weather this time of year in and around the Bosporus and the Sea of Marmara was dreary and damp, and we could also include the Black Sea. After clearing customs, Jeff began to look for Mehmet and his taxi. Mehmet was parked in a loading area near the baggage claim area and the customs clearance desk. Jeff spotted the blue 1957 Chevrolet that was Mehmet's taxi. Jeff was always glad to see Mehmet. Mehmet had a fantastic personality and always appeared to be happy. Mehmet caught sight of Jeff and ran up to greet him, smiling that familiar smile Jeff was always glad to see. Mehmet grabbed Jeff's bags and tossed them into the trunk of the taxi. He opened the door for Jeff to get into the back seat and out of the rain. Jeff always dreaded the drive from the Istanbul airport to the Hilton Hotel through Istanbul, a bustling city with lots of traffic and no traffic lights in the 60s. It was usually every man, and in this case, taxi for himself, as Mehmet always expertly maneuvered through traffic, tooting his car horn. Mehmet, as Jeff knew, pretended to speak only a little broken English, but it was not necessary to speak English, because Mehmet knew Jeff always went to the Hilton Hotel whenever he used Mehmet's taxi from the Istanbul airport. As the taxi pulled out of the parking lot, Jeff observed a girl he had seen boarding the Pan American flight in New York. She was standing near the curb, looking wet and tired, trying to catch the attention of one of the taxis. Jeff tapped Mehmet on the shoulder and told him to stop while pointing to the girl with the 2 large suitcases. Mehmet, without hesitation, came to a halt in front of the girl. He jumped out, grabbed her 2 bags, slung them into the trunk, and opened the door for her to join Jeff in the back seat. "Hi, Carmela. My name is Jeff, and no one should stand out in the rain trying to get a taxi in Istanbul. We are going to the Hilton Hotel, and I assume you are headed in that direction." Carmela momentarily appeared surprised when Jeff spoke her name. Then she remembered one of her suitcases that Mehmet tossed into the trunk had a sticker plastered on the bag with her name, Carmela. Carmela looked at Jeff and thanked him for sharing the taxi ride into Istanbul. As soon as Carmela spoke, Jeff was instantly drawn to her voice. Not only was Carmela one of the prettiest girls Jeff had seen, her voice had a quality that matched her beauty. He could feel Carmela stealing his outside attention and his ability to stay focused on the things at hand. Jeff was discovering something he always knew. When he was attracted to someone, he did not lose his abilities to know most everything. What he lost was the complete power to use his talents with someone who became the object of his affection. This was a good thing because otherwise you would lose the mystery of getting to know someone. Jeff immediately had this feeling with Carmela. Carmela was a good conversationalist, so she and Jeff covered many subjects, from the price of gold in Turkey to the conflict between Turkey and Greece on the island of Cyprus. When Mehmet's taxi stopped in front of the Hilton, Jeff motioned for Mehmet to pull his taxi over to the parking curb. The rain was making that beautiful Mother Nature sound on the roof of the cab as Jeff and Carmela continued their conversation. Mehmet was absorbing every word spoken between these two. In addition, Mehmet could understand why Jeff wanted to extend the conversation with one of the loveliest girls he had seen in his taxi. As Mehmet listened to Carmela and Jeff and their conversation, he was wondering if these 2 Americans were part of an international MI7 plan. The nature of Mehmet's work always made him suspect everyone as a foreign agent. He knew Jeff was an agent, but Carmela was a mystery to him. Carmela told Jeff about her parents and her dad's position with the company he represented in Turkey. She had decided to come and live with them in Istanbul until she could determine her next move in finding a job. If not for a meeting her dad was in today, he would have picked her up at the airport. Carmela said she told him she would wait on him in the lobby of the Istanbul Hilton. Jeff's cover story was his position with World Recordings as a talent scout for this large company with offices located all over the world, with New York City being the headquarters. He was in Turkey looking for groups that performed traditional Turkish folk music to sign a contract for the release of a World Recordings album. Jeff told Carmela he had developed a love for Turkish folk music, which was true as well as part of a cover. Jeff admitted to Carmela that this music was not for everyone, but most people, if they took the time to listen, they would usually be like Jeff and develop a love for Turkish music. Although the album would be a MI7 contrived recording release, the album was legitimate. MI7 would pick up the tab for this record album. Jeff had used this recording company as a cover several times before in other parts of the world. Jeff was told by the operations people back in D.C. he could recruit others in his quest to find Vladimir. He was even authorized to admit he was working for MI7 if he had a legitimate reason to share information. Jeff explained to Carmela about the record company and the reason he was in Istanbul. He asked her if she would join him tomorrow night when he would visit a nightclub where one of the most famous groups in Turkey would be performing. Carmela did not hesitate to say yes. She would be delighted to join Jeff tomorrow evening. She gave Jeff her parents' address, phone number, and asked him to call her if there was a change of plans. Carmela noticed her dad pulling into the Hilton parking lot while she and Jeff continued their conversation in Mehmet's taxi. Carmela rolled down the taxi window and motioned for her dad to come over and join them. Carmela opened the door to the taxi as her dad ran to get out of the rain. She introduced Jeff to her dad and told him Jeff worked for World Recordings. Frank, Carmela's dad, told Jeff he was familiar with that record label and had several albums of Asian music produced by them. Carmela and her dad decided to make a run for it to his automobile. The rain was heavy, and it did not look like it was going to let up. She told Jeff she would see him tomorrow at 8 p.m. at the address she had given him. Carmela's dad shook hands with Jeff, and he and Carmela ran to get out of the rain. Jeff was thinking Carmela's dad, due to his position with his company, could have some information that could possibly help in the search for Vladimir. Jeff gave Mehmet a handsome tip and booked his taxi for the next evening to take him and Carmela to the club to listen to traditional Turkish folk music. Jeff decided to leave Mehmet with something to think about, so he said, "Keep the big ears on, Mehmet." As Jeff ran for the front door of the Hilton, he could imagine Mehmet trying to figure out the big ear statement. Jim knew the folks Mehmet worked for would know exactly what Jeff was referring to. The Turkish operations people would know Jeff knew the score with Turkish intelligence and Mehmet as their agent.